employees share horror stories, midnight meltdowns she'd call at 1 a.m., demanding rewrites, red carpet rage. She yelled that bad lighting made her look like a politician, not a princess, and a Paris PR disaster.
South Park just exposed Meghan Markle over her Paris hotel bills, and the truth is shocking. It all started as a glossy Fashion Week fairy tale. Meghan gliding through Paris in designer looks, VIP access, and every camera trained on her. But late-night sleuths and leaked docs painted a different picture. Hotel receipts and billing lines that didn't add up, security invoices that read like a small business budget, and a mystery name popping up as the one who actually paid the tab. Suddenly, that dreamy Paris trip looked less like independence and more like someone else picking up the check.
She ignored warnings not to film near the Diana crash site, then blamed the team when backlash.
People are talking because this cuts to the heart of everything Meghan's been selling lately. Independence, honesty, and a brand built on doing it yourself. If those hotel records are real, they flip the script. Who covered the rooms? Why were those costs hidden? And how did even Prince Harry allegedly get blindsided by the paperwork leaking out? Let's dig in.
Today, Prince Harry and Meghan Markle rejected by the A-list as a shocking new offer emerges for her to return to being a Soho House girl.
It all started with a glossy Instagram moment. Meghan landing in Paris, all hair, makeup, and that carefully chosen wardrobe that screams comeback. The photos looked like a movie trailer. Candlelit dinners, soft focus car rides, and front row shots at shows that made headlines within minutes. It was supposed to be the kind of return that says, "I'm back, I belong." The soft power reboot the team had been quietly building. Behind the scenes, something small and boring, a hotel bill, turned the whole thing into a mess. At first, nobody noticed anything odd. Fans and fashion pages cheered, paparazzi fed the machine. The suits and the smiles were exactly the kind of content that makes brands take notice. But then, journalists and a few curious sleuths started looking at the details. A booking name that didn't match Meghan's team, payment lines that led to a corporate account, and bank transfers that didn't point back to Archwell or any account connected to the couple. That's when the whispers started. Who paid for that suite? Who covered the private security? Why was the payment routed through a shell account instead of a brand invoice or Meghan's own company?
And there is very much something in Meghan Markle's development which I think is encapsulated by regression. Everything is a regression. She had so many opportunities. And of course, in recent weeks, that regression has involved Marcus Anderson, the Soho House guy who first introduced Harry and Meghan, being involved in everything.
Rumors spread fast. Some outlets guessed a fashion house was quietly sponsoring the trip. Others suggested a friend had stepped in. But then, a French site posted screenshots, partial hotel statements that looked real enough to shake things up. The files showed a corporate payer connected to a media investor in Los Angeles. Suddenly, that dreamy Paris trip looked less like a solo, independent comeback and more like a PR project paid for by someone else. For a woman who talks about independence and authenticity, the optics felt brutal. Of course, the internet went wild. One side said, maybe it's clerical error. Another side said, this proves everything we suspected. The anger online didn't care about nuance. Tweets called it hypocrisy. Late-night hosts joked about a paid vacation. Gossip columns framed it as yet another Sussex scandal. Behind closed doors, the story was already bigger than a hotel receipt. It touched on money, trust, and the idea of who gets to bankroll a celebrity's comeback.
Who says that she has now been branded the boss from hell. And he writes 10 PR pros in 5 years and counting. Meghan Markle's latest communications director, Emily Robinson, has become the newest casualty in the Sussex spin cycle. She's impossible, says one ex-staffer.
Inside Meghan's camp, panic set in. PR teams began to scramble. Lawyers circled, and advisors shouted into phones trying to figure out how to stop the bleeding. If this was a planned brand moment, it had gone wrong. If it wasn't, The lack of clarity made things worse. Sources close to the story said Meghan felt blindsided, like someone in her circle had leaked the wrong file at the wrong time. There were even whispers that a friend or a fixer could have been involved, someone who once arranged access and favors, and now might have been the one who arranged this sort of gift without thinking through the fallout.
They're constantly debating who the real Meghan Markle is. You know, is she with Love Meghan? Is she the girl sitting down at the Fortune most powerful women girl? She's a chameleon. She changes based on her environment. I think
Harry's reaction mattered too. For years, the couple said they wanted freedom from the palace system and financial independence. The idea that a hush-hush backer covered part of a public trip felt like a symbolic step backward. Friends said Harry was furious not because of the money, but because of the idea that their careful narrative, one about standing on their own, was suddenly undercut. He reportedly pulled back from joint meetings and avoided some public appearances while he processed what the leaks meant. That distance was noticed. It was small at first, a missed press call or a private meeting skipped. But in public relations, small things read as signals, and people saw the signal.
Former employees share horror stories, midnight meltdowns she'd call at 1 a.m., demanding rewrites, red carpet rage. She yelled that bad lighting made her look like a politician, not a princess.
Then the guessing game turned to names. Some points in the thread were outright speculation. Fashion houses, anonymous billionaires, old friends. One version that circulated claimed a big Hollywood agency, or its top people, had handled hotel logistics as part of a planned deal. Another claimed a social gatekeeper had quietly comped membership fees and hospitality long ago, and those ties had resurfaced as receipts that went public. In every version, the main story stayed the same. The trip's price tag did not match the image of a woman paying her own way. Whatever the truth, the leak had consequences. Luxury brands are careful. They work off reputation and subtlety, not stunts. When news outlets suggested a brand had been used as a prop in a comeback play, houses and their teams paid attention. Dior or Balenciaga or some other label denying ties, even briefly, was like a cold splash of water. Apps filled with comments. If Dior won't touch her, who will? That kind of narrative can be deadly in fashion and entertainment. Brands start to think twice about partnerships. PR firms hesitate. Producers back away. Invitations dry up. That's how quiet isolation begins in high-gloss circles.
And a Paris PR disaster. She ignored warnings not to film near the Diana crash site, then blamed the team when backlash hit. Sources say Harry tries to play peacemaker, but no one can keep up with her expectations.
And that quiet isolation is brutal in its own way. Suddenly calls stopped coming in. People who once called to praise a new initiative started saying meetings were full or their calendars were blocked. Projects that were in early talks cooled off without official cancellations. Even friendly outlets, the ones that once ran soft features, were more careful. The rumor of hidden payments makes everyone nervous because association now carries risk. In Hollywood and high fashion, risk equals lost deals.
One insider put it bluntly, it's not a PR problem, it's a Meghan problem.
Inside the Montecito house, the mood shifted. The home that had been a refuge suddenly felt like a place under radar. Sources said Meghan was crushed. It wasn't just anger or professional embarrassment, it was betrayal. She'd put energy into a relaunch, expecting control. Instead, proof that she hadn't footed the bill, even partially, felt to her like someone else writing her comeback script. Those who knew her said she cried and paced, alternately furious and numb. Harry, meanwhile, was said to be tired. Years of headlines and back and forth with press had worn him down. Seeing another controversy that could be traced back to decisions or loose deals put more pressure on him. Friends said the strain showed in quiet ways. Private dinners canceled, fewer public jokes, a withdrawal from some shared projects. The fallout reached further. Royal aides and palace insiders were not thrilled. Reports claimed that efforts to slowly thaw relations, quiet talks, low-key meetings, were put on hold. If the royal family had any hope of a very limited rapprochement, the optics of a celebrity-funded comeback did not help. Even if the story was messy and unclear, the perception mattered. For institutions that prize tradition and careful optics, perception often becomes reality.
And Meghan could have had, I think, a smashing success potentially in Hollywood, but she needed to allow her PR team, who are trained professionals in the area of public relations, manage her image. But she's such a control freak, she can't let them do it.
On social media, jokes and memes pile up fast and stay longer than real explanations. Clips from the Paris trip were remixed with satire. Side-by-side edits compared the staged glamour to leaked hotel receipts. Some defended Meghan, calling the story sexist or a smear. Others mocked her for trying to manufacture authenticity. The debate was loud and messy. It blurred the line between private mistake and public lesson, because in the age of social media, that line is razor thin. What made the scandal sting was that it wasn't only about money, it was about trust. Whether or not a friendly sponsor covered the cost, the leak suggested that either relationships had been mishandled or promises had been broken. Either way, that eats at people close to the situation. If a friend had helped without clear terms, that friend might feel exposed. If a business partner had changed their mind, that partner might have felt used. And when the backstory involves powerful people in entertainment and fashion, the ripple effect can end careers or at least pause comebacks for a long time.
And even in Hollywood, they will forgive a lot of things, but if you're rude and you lack a lot of talent, Hollywood just tends to not be interested, because what they want are people who are easy to work with. And we've heard time and time again, endlessly, that Meghan Markle is not an easy person to work with, and definitely not for.
As the days passed, new details leaked. Who had arranged rooms, who had been CC'd on the invoices, little signs that looked like proof of plans and deals. Some outlets said the accounts had been quietly corrected, that the hotel was reimbursed by a different party. But once a scandal exists, corrections rarely get the same attention as the initial headlines. The quiet fixes are small, and the loud clapback is loud. For Meghan, the damage was not just an embarrassed headline. It was a setback to momentum, to trust, and, if reports are to be believed, to her marriage's daily life.
Part of that problem is that Meghan is such a control freak. She can't allow people to work well. That's why everything they begin with and they start off with ends up being just terrible, because Meghan's not a creative, Harry's not a creative.
She tried to respond. Sources said she told her team to pivot narrative, to emphasize that she'd intended the trip to be an independent move, and that any outside help had been miscommunicated. She floated a message about empowerment, resilience, and being a modern woman who accepts help sometimes. But those messages felt rehearsed to parts of the internet. In PR terms, the reaction was muddled. Some audiences believed a sincere mistake. Others saw staging. The result? The story became a mirror that reflected back people's pre-existing feelings about celebrity, power, and authenticity.
Whole, again, continuing story of Meghan Markle and allegedly bullying and being terrible to staff members. It's a horrible reputation to have, and it definitely turns people off within the industry she so wants validation from.
The saga also made clear a simple lesson about modern fame. It's fragile. An image can be built carefully, but it can wobble and then break fast. A hotel bill is a small thing, a line on a ledger, but in the right or wrong moment, it becomes a symbol. It tells a story people want to believe. And once that story takes hold, the cleanup is tough. Companies and people who once supported a star might lose appetite for association. That quiet distancing is the real cost of scandal in elite circles. In the weeks after, the tone shifted from gossip to strategy. Meghan's team reportedly launched a damage control plan, looking for quiet wins, safe interviews, and low-risk partnerships. Harry, according to sources, started rebuilding his own lane, taking solo calls, and testing smaller public roles to see if he could shore up his own reputation. Behind closed doors, the couple had to decide whether to double down on joint projects or carve out separate paths for a while. Those private choices matter, because every public action is interpreted.